Just snatched them off of a train. They have a press conference at 3 o'clock. We're delighted to welcome Mr. Martin Sheen. You have heard some of his great credits, and Martin Sheen, we're delighted to have you in Good Day. Along with you, Mr. Mitch Snyder, a member of the Community for Creative Nonviolence. And I want to point out to everybody that I gather that the two of you met when you, Martin Sheen, portrayed Mitch Snyder in the movie The Samaritans, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And does that launch your interest, Martin Sheen, in the plight of the homeless, or were you there even before that?
No, I must confess I was not actively there before that, but you can't be around this energy next to me and not get involved.
What is it about the homeless that grabs you, Martin? Why this particular cause?
Well, it's really indicative of what's going on in the whole country with social justice. There's so little of it, and that is kind of like the first step. I don't think you can separate any issue in social justice issues, whether they're the arms race or Central America, AIDS, apartheid, homelessness. They all are cut from the same cloth, and it's a seamless cloth. If you want peace, you must work for social justice. So you start with what's at your front door, the homeless.
Mitch Snyder, let me bring you in right away. Interesting life, a world of Madison Avenue. You switch and now live in a shelter in Washington, D.C. Is that correct?
Actually, for the last 3.5 months, I've been living on the street, around the Capitol, in an effort to focus attention on the issue and to get Congress to pass legislation, which in fact is scheduled to be voted on today by the House.
Tell me, both of you, what is the homeless person? Who is the homeless person? There are myths abounding about who they are. Are they men? Are they women? Are they alcoholics? Are they single women? Are they married women with children? Who are they? Where do we find them? And do we have the problem in Boston? Presumably we do. That's why you're here.
Well, there aren't myths. There's defense mechanisms and there's reality. The reality is that homeless people are everyone. They're you. I know reporters who live on the street who have in previous years interviewed us and written stories for major newspapers and are now, in one case, living in a women's shelter, in another case, living in an abandoned building. The defense mechanism is that in some way they are different than you and I, so that we're protected from that possibility. In our guts, we understand that, in fact, they are you and I. They are middle-class people, they're old people, they're poor people, they're young people. You find every walk of life, every color, every age, every size represented on the street. What all those folks share in common is only one thing, and that is that at some point in time, they needed help desperately because of some either temporary or permanent disability, economic, mental, physical. Something happened that caused them to need help and they didn't get it.
Martin, I would be curious to know, were you part of the demonstration the other night in Washington where lots of people stayed up all night and slept outside, including Congressman Joseph Kennedy and his wife?
Yes.
What was that like for you,
well,
to be homeless for that night, in a sense?
Yeah, well, mind you, it's not possible to assimilate the real living in the streets life, because I have a credit card in my pocket. I know I can go to a hotel. Yeah. I'm in a hotel now for tonight, so I can't possibly comprehend what it's like. But I would suggest to anyone that is interested in helping the homeless to begin there, to go and spend the night in the street with the people. And if you make it through the night and you wake up the next morning, you start to get some idea of what it's like and what you should do about it.
You said earlier before we went on the air that you find our mayor, Ray Flynn, sympathetic to this problem.
Very much so, yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, if you would, please.
Yeah. Well, he's one of the very few people in government across the country that is sympathetic, and you know very well what the feelings towards the homeless here in Boston is like. So this guy is, I met him with Mitch, in fact, in January down in Boston at a news conference. He came to support the urgent relief for the homeless bill, which is currently before Congress, the one that Mitch said they're voting on this morning, hopefully today. And I was very impressed with this guy. He's a very real person. I think that any time that you can feel another person's pain and just express that in a public fashion, in a private fashion, in a spiritual fashion, in a humane way, you are the better for it. It's a reflection of the best part of yourself.
On this program, Mitch Snyder, not too long ago I spoke with Secretary of Housing, Mr. Pierce. He said, if people want to find housing in this country, they can find it. You sympathetic, obviously not at all, to that statement. Are you finding Washington at all sympathetic to your plight and to your causes?
The administration is not, and I might add that I think that Secretary Pierce is an embarrassment to the nation. He's certainly an embarrassment to me. His ideas are barbaric, and his level of compassion and sympathy is simply not there. The administration has been consistently hostile to the idea that people who have need should be helped to any degree by the federal government. Congress has not been very helpful up until now, but there's a change. We found a very different environment in the last few months when we knocked on doors, met with more than 100 Congress members, asked them, urged them to introduce legislation, meaningful legislation. We found a willingness and an openness and a sensitivity that we hadn't found before, and I think that's a reflection of growing concern on the part of growing numbers of Americans.
At least about 50% of your children. Emilio Estevez, who both my daughters want to marry, I'll put aside for a second. You must be awfully proud of Charlie Sheen, whose face adorns a national magazine, and Platoon being a very powerful movie, and in a way, the son of Apocalypse Now, a movie that you may know something about.
Yeah. I was very impressed with Charlie because what's amazing to me is he's only 21 years old, and in that picture he managed to tap a very, very deep resource in him and to expose himself in that way on film. That's a very special gift. He's a very powerful young man.
Your other son, a second son, not your other son, there's a third one too, I believe.
Ramon.
Ramon, he carries your original name, and Emilio carries your original surname.
Yeah.
May I ask why he did not take the name Sheen?
I have no idea.
Oh, you must.
I'm telling you, I don't. I was probably the last one to know that they were actors.
How come?
Well, I was so involved in myself, you know. I always woke up one day and they were fellow actors. I mean, they'd travel with us and spend a lot of time on the set, but I was far more interested in myself and what I was doing and what they were doing and who they were. I mean, I was stunned, frankly. First time I saw Emilio was in a senior play in high school that he had written with a colleague, and he did this very emotional scene, and I watched the show and thought, my, there's my son, there's one of my closest friends, and now he's a fellow actor. My God, extraordinary.
Does a father ever become jealous of his sons?
God, I should hope not. I certainly don't feel that way. I'm inspired and nourished by them.
Great.
These are people that I would choose as friends, as very, very close friends. You know?
Are you inspiring the politics of Martin Sheen in their lives, or will they just come to that as Mitch Snyder's eyebrows just went to heaven?
Well, both Emilio and Ramon, Charlie, were planning to join us last night in Washington on the heating grate, and were unable to get away from their shooting schedules. Charlie's doing a film in Los Angeles, and Emilio is in Vancouver, but they tried desperately to get out of their day's shooting to come and join us. They will. They'll join me somewhere.
I must ask you, because only in fairness, the other two children, another son and a daughter, circling around the theater business as well.
Oh yeah, Renee Estevez, she uses that wonderful name, is a very fine young actress. I directed my first show last year about teenage pregnancy, which she starred, called Babies Having Babies. And in fact, she just finished a MacGyver episode. She was on recently, last month, Hallmark Hall of Fame show. So
pretty soon we'll be a little bit concerned about the monopolizing of the theater business by Martin Sheen. Mitch Snyder, please talk to me a little bit. I don't want to totally monopolize Martin Sheen. You worked, I believe, in the world of Madison Avenue. Is that not correct? A management consultant?
Yes, back in 1969.
Earning big bucks?
I was doing reasonably well.
Why would you give that up and take the life of a man now living many of his nights on the streets?
I was lucky. I woke up one morning and realized it was a stupid way to live, and I've had 17 years to be very grateful for the fact that I did wake up that way that day. It was, in fact, a very stupid way to live. And
was it literally waking up one day and say...
Literally, yeah, in a cold sweat. And I can only ascribe that to the grace of God and a tremendous amount of luck, because I left a lot of folks behind who spent probably the last 17 years doing something that they wouldn't have done for 15 minutes if they hadn't gotten paid for it. And now I wake up each day with the knowledge that I'm doing what I believe is right and necessary, and I'm helping to change in some small way the world in which I live.
May I ask a personal
question? Nothing is worth more than that.
Were you married at the time?
Yes,
With
I woke
children?
up that way and my wife didn't. We went in separate directions. She's since remarried and has had another child.
You have children?
I have 2 sons.
Are
both
they
in
involved in
school.
your world or your prior world?
Well, they're a little bit involved in my world because of our relationship. They've come down to visit. They were there when some of the filming was going on. They've been down since to visit the community, but I'd say for the most part they live in the other world, the world that I left.
Are you two gentlemen hopeful? The world of apartheid exists not too far from here, really, and El Salvador, Nicaragua, the homeless, poverty abounds still. The world of black people is said to be perhaps even worse than it was 10 years ago. Are you hopeful?
I couldn't live without hope. I could not possibly live if I didn't have hope. Yes, very, very, very strong hope. I don't always know where I'm going, and very often I feel the way Dan Berrigan described his life, that the last match had burned out. He's still walking in the darkness, but he's walking. It's with faith, you know.
But hope has to be tempered with reality. There's a price attached to hope. We can't sit back and wait for the good days to come. The world, in fact, will blow up in our face unless we stand up and start acting like human beings and start fulfilling our obligations to do what needs to be done to ensure that there can be a future for the next generation.
But do you find that the world is working with you, or do you find a lot of apathetic people saying, well, you guys handle it? And Martin Sheen, what are you doing in this political thing? You're supposed to be an actor, aren't you? What do you find as you get involved in your political work? Apathy, or people that
Sure,
are...
there's a great deal of apathy, but I'm not just an actor or an activist. I'm also a husband and a father and a grandfather and a Catholic. And I believe what Reverend King said is very, very true. The church is the place to go forth from. If it doesn't have any relevance in social justice issues, it doesn't have any relevance, period. So it's part of my Catholicism, my true belief in the message of the gospel. It is good news.